ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So, the Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures, they describe the wonderful activities, appearance, activities, and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Holy Scriptures reveal that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. There are many references in the Scriptures. The most common being from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it describes that the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, he appears in Kali Yuga in a golden form, and he specifically comes along with his associates and his expansions to establish the process of self-purification through the chanting of the holy names of the Supreme Lord. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sangopangastriparshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Praye Yajanti Sumedhasa. So this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Similarly, in the Mahabharata, there's reference to Lord Chaitanya's appearance in this material world, wherein it is stated that he will take to the renounced order of life and he will establish through his own personal example and through his teachings the process for this age of Kali by which one can perfect one's life and go back home, back to Godhead. Unfortunately, the material world is also a place that is designed to keep oneself in illusion if one is not careful enough. If one is not attentive specifically towards leading a pure life, a life which is free from distractions, which is free from allurements, if one is not attentive in leading such a life, then one is caught up in the web of illusion. In a very simple Bengali poetic form, a great Bengali seer, saintly personality, an author, has said that most of the living entities, if not all, in this material world are sleeping in the laps of the witch called as Maya. And the Supreme Lord has appeared as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he is encouraging everyone and is calling out to everyone to wake up. Jiva jago, jiva jago, Gaura chand bole, Kata nidra jayo maya, Pishachi rakhole. Pishachi rakhole. Sleeping in the laps of the Pishachi, the witch called as Maya. This word Pishachi in Bengali and Sanskrit, it basically means somebody who sucks away your vital energy. And that is what the material energy does to people who want to stay in illusion. The material energy works in different ways. For somebody who is interested in Krishna consciousness, the material energy provides them the necessary facility to be enthusiastic and encouraged in Krishna consciousness. Either it is through rewards or punishment. Either ways, material energy works such that one receives encouragement to practice Krishna consciousness. On the other hand, for those who want to stay in illusion, who do not want to understand that they are not this material body, who have no inclination to understand the nature of the eternal spirit soul, who are wasting their lives trying to be happy, enjoying material bodily pursuits. For them, material energy again and again puts them in so many problems, such that they finally come to this realization that a life of so-called temporary happiness and perpetual trouble and misery in this material world is not worth it. And then they can make an inquiry into Krishna consciousness. So, when the word Pisachi is used for material energy, it is just to help us be motivated to give up the life of illusion. So anyways, life in this material world has its own set of problems. For some, the problems are a lot, and for others, they are more than a lot. That's how the problems in this material world are. Too much and much too much, a lot too much. The funny thing is, or let us say, that which is a little interesting is that having understood that the goal of life is spiritual realization, the strong conditioning of material allurements makes one be inattentive time and again. Let me try and explain this through a very simple and hopefully humorous example. You know, sometimes or many a times in most of our temples around the world and any religious structure or program around the world where one has the facility to listen to discourses. So when one is listening to a discourse, a lecture, many a times a lot of people in the audience zone out. A lot of them just zone out, which means basically they fall asleep. So there is this one program somewhere, let's say at ISKCON Scarborough. We have a family that comes in for a Sunday feast program. So the elders are there and the children are there, and the children are also, and they are also asked to sit for the lecture. So one child is sleeping, dozing off. So the speaker asks questions. Who is the creator of the universe? And then the speaker looks at the child that is dozing off. So the brother or the sister, the sibling who's sitting next to this child that is sleeping, that sibling pinches a child. A slight but really painful pinch. Who is the creator of the universe? Pinch. And the child wakes up and says, Krishna, in pain. And everyone is so happy. They start clapping. Correct answer. And then the speaker is happy that the child is, at least the speaker feels that the child is attentive. And the speaker goes on for some time, the child goes off to sleep again. And then the speaker again asks a question. Whom should we pray to get the mercy of Krishna? And a pinch. The child wakes up, Radha! And everyone is amazed. Perfect answer. So you see, sometimes we get used to these names, that a tongue gets habituated to call out to Krishna and Radha. But maybe our tongue gets habituated to these names. We are not conscious enough when we take these names. So chanting of the holy names of Krishna basically means we chant with our tongue and we hear with the ears and we allow the holy names to enter our hearts and completely take over our consciousness. That is a process. Obviously, it begins with chanting with our tongue. However, chanting with our tongue is one of the aspects of chanting of the holy names of Krishna. The other aspects are hearing, absorption, and assimilation. So we have to hear attentively when we chant the names of Krishna with our tongue. We have to absorb our hearts, our minds, when we hear the holy names of Krishna through our ears. And then we have to assimilate it, or we have to be completely conscious of Krishna. We have to let our consciousness be enveloped by the holy names, or by Krishna, by Krishna's grace. So Lord Chaitanya, he has come. And he is referred to as being very munificent, which means very, very compassionate. Most of the other incarnations, they also descend, when they descend to this material world, they provide the process and they expect people to perform. In Lord Chaitanya's case, he comes and establishes a process for self-realization. And at the same time, he also empowers the practitioners with his own divine energy, with his divine compassion. And that is munificence. That is compassion. The process of meditation, where one externally gives up attachment to sense pleasures and takes up to a life of internal meditation and renunciation, has been there and has been very attractive to people over so many ages, so many centuries. Let us try and understand what is compassion in relationship to Lord Chaitanya. So there was a monastery which had been there for like centuries, like ages. And young men, these are from olden times, so generally it would be young men. Young men would come and lead a monastic life in this monastery. One new recruit was practicing meditation on the banks of a small lake along with his fellow monks. There were about 4 or 5 of them, including the new recruit, including the new monk. So as they were practicing their meditation, sitting in a lotus position with eyes closed for hours and hours and hours, the young monk, the new recruit, was finding it new, exciting, and at the same time a little difficult to be focused in his meditation. So after hours of meditation, all of them, it is time now to kind of go on and do the next activity, go to the Prasadam hall. Now the Prasadam hall is right across the lake, the small lake. It is in a straight line from where they were sitting, but there is this lake in between. So they could either go around the lake to the Prasadam hall, or they could go through the lake. So the oldest amongst them, without speaking, stands up and walks over the water across the lake, walks over the water and goes to the other side of the lake, to the prasadam hall. And the next three senior monks too do the same thing. They follow each other across the water. The new recruit is very excited. He feels that, well, if all of them can do that, then maybe I can also walk across the water or walk over the waters across the lake. So he puts his feet into the lake, and within a few steps, he's knee deep in the lake. The other monks who have crossed over, they look back at him and they talk amongst themselves. Maybe we should have told him where the stepping stones are. So the other monks, because they had spent some time there at the monastery, they knew exactly where the stepping stones are so that they can walk across the lake. The new monk wasn't aware of it. So things that are very mystical, that appear to be very intricate, magical, etc., that which is so very esoteric, can be made easy even to a new recruit if certain, let us say, if they are taught how to do it. So in the previous incarnations, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he came to establish religion and help people practice a life of righteousness and a spiritual upliftment. However, when the Supreme Lord comes as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he makes it a lot easier to cross over this ocean of nescience, this ocean of darkness, to cross over material energy. And he specifically explains how one can step on these stepping stones to go across this material world. Association of devotees, regularly chanting the holy names of Krishna, leading a life of sincere practice, a life of purity, no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. Reading scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. These are all stepping stones that have been revealed. And if we carefully use these stepping stones to go forward in our spiritual practices, then very soon we'll find ourselves at the dinner table in the prasadam hall. You know, in the West, the practice of eating is associated with knives and forks, and for good reasons, maybe. Because generally in the West, it is so far away from the equator that the winters can be very cold. Therefore, the food has to be served hot, piping hot, as they say. So knives and forks are helpful. Spoons, knives, forks. Now, in a tropical place like India, it is easier to eat with your hands, with your fingers. The weather is helpful. So anyways, in the West, there was established this culture of eating with knives and forks. So this very, 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 very short story explains about the dinner table. A lady of the Christian faith was in her final moments. She knew she was about to die. So she was asked, "Do you have any last wishes?" She says, "Yes. When you put me in my coffin and people come to pay their last respects, I want you to keep both my hands out of the coffin. And in one hand, I want you to place a knife and the other hand a fork." So everyone is a little surprised. They ask, "Why do you want to do that?" And the lady says, "I want to let everyone know that now I'm going back to the Supreme Lord's house. And there I will be sitting at the dinner table with the Lord and having nice food." So the idea is that one must live a life with good practices, a life of purity, sincerity, dedication, being fully confident and having faith that at the end, when we give up this body, and if we remember Krishna in perfect Krishna consciousness, then we'll go back to the spiritual world to have nice prasadam with the Supreme Lord. In the wonderful forests of Sri Vrindavan Dham, we would be there with Krishna, eager to know what is there in Krishna's lunchbox. Not that we would want to eat of it, but we would want to serve Krishna personally, feed him, or be assistants to those who serve Krishna personally. This is Krishna consciousness. So Lord Chaitanya is very, very important, specifically to Gaudiya Vaishnavas. He is a Supreme Lord, no doubt. But he is important to us because he is so compassionate. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes the beautiful activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita. For the past few months, the world has gone through a serious change. The air is less polluted. The waters in the lakes, the reservoirs are much more clean. All the other species of life, they have this new freedom to move around on the planet. And the human race is being very thoughtful. Very, very thoughtful. The human race is trying to reinvent itself. There has been a surge in the generic spiritual consciousness or the general spiritual consciousness of the people on this planet. There's a lot of time that people have. They are being introspective. Nonetheless, it does seem much more clear that we are definitely in a prison house. We are locked up in a prison cell. And the past few months have been so emphatic. There's such emphasis on this. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a parallel story, but it's very different. Where the Supreme Lord, he asked his devotees not to move out of their houses. What happened is, Lord Chaitanya, after taking sannyas, after taking to the renounced order of life, he moved to Sri Jagannath Puri, the holy city of Lord Jagannath, where Krishna, along with his brother and sister, preside over the hearts and the minds of all the people in this tract of land. So, devotees from Bengal, which is some distance away from Jagannath Puri, would trek, walk, and make this journey to Jagannath Puri, which would last a couple of weeks, a few days to a couple of weeks. Every year they would come to visit Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. One year, Shrikant Sen, the nephew of Shivananda Sen, a very, very dear devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shivananda Sen was very dear to him, very dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Shivananda Sen's nephew, Shrikant Sen, had come to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. He had come from Bengal, and he had come much earlier than all the other devotees, like a few months earlier than all the other devotees. He had come alone. Lord Chaitanya gave him a lot of mercy. He spent a lot of time serving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and serving Lord Jagannath and having wonderful darshans there. He spent a couple of months in Jagannath Puri, and then when his heart was content, he was about to return back to Bengal. Lord Chaitanya, he told Shrikant Sen, please tell Advaita Acharya and all the other devotees in Bengal that this year in the month of Paush, the month of Paush in today's times is the month of December, January, according to the Gregorian calendar. The last 10 to 15 days of December and the first 10 to 15 days of January is the month of Paush. Please let all the devotees in Bengal know that I visit them in the month of Paush. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had never come to Bengal, had never visited Bengal since the time he had gone to Jagannath Puri. So Shrikant Sen, he goes back to Bengal and he lets his uncle Shivananda Sen and the other devotees know of what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said. And all the devotees are so happy, so excited. Advaita Acharya he told the devotees that this year we would not be going to Jagannath Puri because the Lord of our heart, Sri Gauranga, is coming to Bengal. He's coming to visit us. He would be visiting Navadvip. So the devotees who were making preparations to come to Jagannath Puri, they all had a change of plans. They stayed back. And they were making so many wonderful arrangements for welcoming Sri Gauranga in Navadvip. As soon as the month of Pausha dawned, devotees eagerly waited for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Days passed. Every month has about 30 to 31 days. Days passed, turned into weeks. Lord Gauranga did not come. Advaita Acharya, Shivananda Sen, Jagadananda. Lord Chaitanya had specifically told Shrikant that since Jagadananda is already there in Bengal, so when I come, he can assist me personally. So Jagadananda Pandit stayed back, Shivananda Sen stayed back, Murari Gupta stayed back, Advaita Acharya stayed back, Chandrasekhar stayed back, Srivas Thakur stayed back. All the devotees, they just stayed in Navadvip. When about 20 days had passed in the month of Paush, the devotees started becoming morose. Would Lord Gauranga come? He has promised us. They would ask Shrikant, are you sure? Did you hear right, child? Is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming? Is Gauranga Mahaprabhu coming? And he said, yes, yes. He told me to inform all of you. He is not here as yet. So one day, at Shivananda Sen's house, Shivananda Sen was sitting with Jagadananda Pandit. And they had passed the entire day sitting in the courtyard, looking into the far distance, waiting for a sign that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come or is approaching them. And towards the evening, they were feeling sad. At that time, one of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dear followers and devotees, Narsinghananda Brahmachari, whose original name was Pradyumna Brahmachari. But he was so devoted to Lord Nrsingadev that Gaurachandra Bhagavan, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, had personally given him the title, the name, Narsinghananda Brahmachari, one whose only pleasure is to, or one whose only existence is to give pleasure to Lord Nrsingadev. Narsinghananda Brahmachari approaches the house of Shivananda Sen, and he sees Shivananda Sen and Jagadananda Pandit sitting there with a very sad demeanor. He asked them, why are you feeling so sad? And they said, the month of Paush has almost ended. There are only a couple of days remaining. Gaurachandra had told us, he had sent a message that he would come visit us in the month of Paush. When Narsinghananda Brahmachari heard this, he said, no problem. I will personally invite Lord Gaurachandra. And I promise you within 3 days, he shall be here. 3 days from today. Like today, the day is almost over, it is the evening. So tomorrow, day after, and the day after. The day after, he shall be here. having lost almost all hope, these reassuring words of Narsinghananda Brahmachari gave them new life. They were so excited. And Narsinghananda Brahmachari said, tomorrow and day after tomorrow, I will sit down and meditate. And 3 days from today, the third day from today, Lord Gauranga would be here. Meanwhile, collect all ingredients for making nice food preparations for Lord Gauranga. And I will personally cook, said Narsinghananda Brahmachari. So, 2 days, he sat in deep meditation from morning to dusk. And throughout the day, he fasted. He would only eat in the evening. And on the second day, at dusk, with big smile on his face, he said, I have brought Lord Chaitanya to Panihati. Panihati is a city close to Navadvip. It would take half a day's journey from Panihati to come to Navadvip by walk. Today you can cover the same distance in an hour's time. Using a car. But if you have to walk, it would take a little more than half a day's journey. So I brought him to Panihati, and tomorrow he shall be here. Shivananda Sen was so excited. Jagadananda was so excited. And the next day morning, Narsinghananda Brahmachari, after finishing his morning rituals and bath, he said, bring me all the ingredients, bring me so many vegetables and all the other necessities for cooking, and I shall cook. And throughout the day, the entire morning and much of the afternoon, he cooked. And by early afternoon, the sun had just started moving over towards the west, just started moving from the middle of the sky. He said, now I shall sit down and offer food, and Lord Chaitanya shall come and eat. So Narsinghananda Brahmachari would always prepare food in 3 parts. Whatever food he would prepare, whatever offerings of food he would prepare, he divided it into 3 parts. One part he would offer to Lord Jagannath. The second part he would offer to Lord Narsinghadev. The third part he would offer to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he prepared 3 seats. Typically, this is how we do it in Bengal. Even in the temples, we do this. We keep sitting places for the Lord to come and sit. It is called as asan. The place where I come from, Maharashtra, it is called as pati. Maybe in Bengal also they call it the same thing. So you sit on that. This slightly raised platform from the ground. Wooden structure, a flat wooden structure. You sit on it, and then the plate is placed in front of you on the ground, and you eat off the plate. You eat prasad. So that is how the offerings are made to the Lord. So there were 3 sitting places, and 3 plates of offerings were placed in front of each of the sitting places. And then within his mind and heart and his meditation, Narsinghananda Brahmachari invited Lord Jagannath, Lord Narsinghadev, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come and eat the offerings. And Narsinghananda Brahmachari, with his own eyes, he saw Lord Chaitanya appear. Lord Chaitanya looked so beautiful. His complexion was golden and it was so effulgent. and shining, and his shaven head, his lotus-like eyes, his saffron cloth, his beautiful smile, with his long arms extending down to his knees, and his fine fingers and toes. This enchanting form comes into the house of Shivananda Sen, seen only by Narsinghananda Brahmachari, sits down and eats offerings of all the three plates. And Narsinghananda Brahmachari is so struck seeing Lord Chaitanya eat. He's amazed, he's jubilant, he's so happy that he is completely mesmerized. And then Lord Gauranga, he finishes off everything, he eats every single preparation. They all disappear. And then he smiles, he gets up, he goes to the washing place, Prakshalanam. There he washes his hands and rinses his mouth and washes his feet. Then picks up some of the spices, mouth fresheners to freshen up his mouth. And then he says, Haribol. He doesn't say Haribol, he just smiles and he leaves. And it's gone. Narsinghananda Brahmachari is simply sitting there, mesmerized, crying tears. Hours pass. Shivananda Sen, Jagadananda are waiting outside. What is Narsinghananda Brahmachari doing for so long? So after some time, they enter the room and they see him sitting there transfixed. They go up to him and they say, Prabhu, Prabhu, Narsinghananda Brahmachari ji. And Narsinghananda Brahmachari, he comes out of his stupor, his divine stupor. And then he starts saying, Lord Gauranga was here and he ate everything. And the others, they kind of, what? He was here. When was he here? We were sitting right outside the door. We were sitting in the courtyard. There's no other way to enter the house. We would have seen him. They had so many questions in their minds. They were about to ask those questions. They were about to, the lips had almost spoken out those words. But Narsinghananda Brahmachari, he stopped them with his own personal statements. He said, and he came and he ate everything. Why did he have to eat everything? I had made a special plate for him. Why couldn't he just eat off his plate? He also ate the offerings of Narsinghadev and Lord Jagannath. I know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is non-different than Lord Jagannath. Therefore, if he eats off his plate, it's perfectly fine. But Narsinghadev, I know that he is the same as Lord Narsinghadev too. But then why did he have to eat Lord Narsinghdev's offerings? Since I'm a servant of Lord Narsinghadev, this was in ecstasy that he was saying like that. Sometimes in ecstasy, devotees they express various emotions. He says, now that Lord Narsinghadev has fasted, therefore I as a servant of Lord Narsinghadev will also not eat. I'll also fast. Shivananda Sen wasn't sure what he should believe and what he could not. But then everyone knew the elevated status of Narsinghananda Brahmachari, the elevated spiritual status. So they all kept quiet and they all accepted the fact that Lord Gauranga had come. The next year, when Shivananda Sen went to Bengal, went to Jagannath Puri along with the devotees of Bengal to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting with all of them. Suddenly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought up the topic of Narsinghananda Brahmachari, and he was glorifying him again and again and again. Meanwhile, coming back to Navadvip before the previous year, when Narsinghananda Brahmachari was crying out aloud, Shivananda Sen was trying to console him. Narsinghananda Brahmachari says, well, I can stay without eating, but why should my Lord fast? So he asks Shivananda Sen, please bring me more ingredients so I can specifically cook for Lord Nrsingadev and offer to him and make an offering to him. So Shivananda Sen makes arrangements, and Nrsingananda Brahmachari, he cooks for Lord Nrsingadev, makes an offering, and then after Lord Nrsingadev has accepted the offering, he distributes that to all the other devotees and personally also partakes of the prasad. So the next year, Lord Chaitanya, he brings up the topic of Nrsingananda Brahmachari, and everyone is glorifying Nrsingananda Brahmachari. And Lord Chaitanya said, yes. And his cooking, I love his cooking. Last year, in the month of Paush, I had come to the house of Shivananda Sen, and there I had eaten all that Nrsingananda Brahmachari had cooked for me. And when Shivananda Sen heard that, he was completely satisfied. He knew that Lord Chaitanya had come to his house and he had kept his promise. And all the devotees of Bengal from last year who had also come to Jagannath Puri, when they heard that, they also felt deeply satisfied. These glorious pastimes glorify the wonderful relationship that Lord Chaitanya has with his devotees. These great devotees who walked this planet just about 540 years ago, just around that time, about 500 years ago. We are so fortunate that we are living in these times where we can describe these wonderful pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, where Lord Chaitanya told all the devotees, don't come to Bengal, don't come to Jagannath Puri, stay in lockdown in Bengal. And all the devotees, they waited an entire month. So whatever is the Lord's desire, a devotee accepts that as mercy. And similarly in today's times, there are challenges that at the same time, there is such a great opportunity for every single practitioner of Krishna consciousness to make advancement individually. There is so much of reduction in the pressure for material enjoyment. There is so many avenues of material distractions have just evaporated. And there's so much more opportunity to remember Krishna, to serve Krishna, and to chant the holy names of the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I'll stop here and I will request Amal Thakur Prabhu to let me know if there are any questions and we could try and answer these questions. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for giving a wonderful class again. And in the meantime, Prabhus and Matajis, you can submit your questions using the chat option. Please do so. Prabhu actually covered so many things within the very short time, and in our heart is filled with the love of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how he actually reciprocated with his devotees. Especially when we were hearing about Nrsingananda Brahmachari's story, and our eyes are filled with tears now, and we feel that how love we should have to get Mahaprabhu. And also, Prabhu mentioned that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came in different way, not the previous avatars, that he actually made everything easy for self-realization through only Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And also Prabhu mentioned that this chanting is good to have chanting, make tongue habituated for the names of Krishna and Radha, but also what we need to do chanting, hearing, absorption, and assimilation with our consciousness. That's a very good point, and we all of us will remember that, Prabhu. Very good, Prabhu. And as you mentioned, Prabhu, that at the time of death, if we remember Krishna, we can go back to the special dinner table. We like that story, and we will remember that. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8.7, whoever remembers me will come to me for sure. Prabhu, I have a question to you.
Yes.
As you mentioned that every situation we have to accept that this is blessings for us. In the time of this, like whatever we're going through last 5-6 months, and we don't know what will happen next, we are sometimes lost, and we understand that many of us are making their houses as temple. That's good. But still, if there is any guidelines, in short, to deal with children, especially that is school going, they cannot go out, they're at home, and we are working from home. Can you just expand this for a few minutes, Prabhu?
Okay. It seems that so the question is, could we share a few tips or a few ideas uh, how to understand the present situation of living a little more frugally, I guess, a little more simply, and
Yes,
at the
Prabhu.
same time keeping our children engaged because they are at home and everyone is at home. So I think most of us are rediscovering parenting skills, which is very good. We had kind of leased it out to many other agencies like daycare agencies, schools. We had leased out the responsibility of parenting to them. As devotees, not so much, because as devotees we, or as God conscious people, I should say, not this wasn't as as much as uh, those who are not practicing God consciousness. Still, there was such dependency on so many other um, agencies or avenues, I would say. Now look at all the other species of life. I mean, there are 8,400,000 species of life, of which there are just 400,000 of humans. The human species only 400,000. So 8 million species are out there. And all of them, they exhibit their parenting skills in direct connection with their offsprings. Most of them. Most of them, they spend a lot of time raising up their offsprings. They do not have daycares, they do not have slides or these uh, entertainment places. Um, Material nature has equipped every single mother and father in every species of life to raise up their offsprings. As humans, we definitely have higher intellect. Definitely. Because we can ask questions like why. As humans, that is true. I'm sorry. Um, However, if we use that intellect to minimize our responsibilities or to give it a form wherein we lease out those responsibilities to others. We may work very hard and we lease out that responsibility to others. Then we have to be careful to see that the upbringing of the children or the offsprings is done in accordance with what material nature has arranged. In the present digital world or digital scenario, the kind of lifestyle that we have developed is definitely not in sync with what material nature has arranged. Yantra is never a replacement for interpersonal relationships. Machines can never be a replacement for interpersonal relationships. Machine makes us lose our ability to have interpersonal relationships. For example, when a machine like a washing machine cleans the clothes of our family, the washing machine just does it without any feelings. But when a parent does that, when a mother or a father does that, then every single cloth has a meaning. Every single cloth that they wash with their hands has a meaning. Or this is the shirt of my child, this is the shirt of my husband, or this is this is the cloth of my wife, or something like that. So then there are interactions. Like, oh, I was washing your cloth and it was very dirty or it had stains. But when you machine clean, all those interactions are lost. So yantra basically is a Sanskrit word for machines or things also. It takes away our ability to interact. It takes away our ability to have relationships. That is what yantra is, unfortunately. So this period, it makes us aware of our lackings. We are so used to having commodities, and we have so much kind of fallen in love with commodities that trying to live a little more simply is a big adjustment that we have to make in our lives. It is a complete change. It's a huge change. And it has also made us aware of our shortcomings in terms of relating to each other with our higher intellect, in terms of relationships, especially with children. So both ways, it goes both ways. As parents or as family members, we find ourselves less equipped to deal with children who have never ever kind of, or as a child, they have kind of forgotten the experience of having a relationship with family members because they've spent so much time with machines, and machines have made a deep impression on their lives. So even if it is very difficult, we should take this as an opportunity. Even if it is very, very tiresome, if we can take this as an opportunity, then today's times can serve as building blocks to a very, very bright and long future of deep relationships with the child or with children. So this is a principle. Now, once we have understood this principle, then in Srila Prabhupada's own words, we will be able to tolerate what is known as the burden of love. Prabhupada describes two kinds of burdens in his books: the burden of love and the burden of the beast. I will not describe that in detail. It is kind of self-explanatory. So these few months have opened up these avenues, or they have exposed us, or they have brought to us these opportunities to reinvent ourselves and to reinvent our family relationships. Let us see if we are able to do good with it. So rather than give you more details about, spend more time with the family, try to understand them, try to engage your time with children. Most of you, you are very educated, you are very experienced, you know all of that. Hopefully, today the principle that we have discussed, maybe it is an eye-opener, or maybe it kind of, again, it reestablishes this principle, gets reestablished in our lives. This is a very good opportunity to establish interpersonal relationships, because there's nothing else we can do. We have to deal with each other, and we have to deal with the fact that we cannot go out much. So all those talks that we used to have about how it is good to have deep family relationships, now we have to live the talk. We have to walk the talk. Find out things to do in the house, find out things to do in your backyard, find out things to do in your front yard, find out things to do in the morning and the evening, like walks, sitting outside, have a sandbox, or do something in the garden. For example, if some of you who are from India, from Bangladesh, from Fiji, these places, who grew up in these places and then moved over to Canada in your adult life, or maybe the US in your adult life. Remember those times that you used to spend with Mother Nature, with the dirt, not the dirt, with the mud, with the dust, with trees, with twigs, with stones. There's so many fun games that you can have with these gifts that Mother Nature has to offer to us. Like we used to play with sticks and stones, like not really hit around, but black stones around, and we used to play something called as sticks and stones, basically. So the entire backyard would be like an ocean, and these black stones would serve as islands, and we would have a stick, and one person would be, somebody who would hold up a stick, and the others had to take that stick away from that person, and they could drag the stick with their own sticks. I'm just giving you a game. There are so many games like that that one can play with children. Hop, skip, jump. Try. It's fun. Try being a child again, at least for an hour or two a day, every day, with your children. And some of them are adolescents. Introduce them to these games. They may find it really weird. Well, they have nothing better to do. So why not? Weird or not. Once we start playing these games, once we start having these interactions, it becomes fun. Our intellect definitely gets attracted by such activities. So I hope that was helpful. Is that helpful, Amal Thakur Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, wonderfully said. And uh, one of our devotees actually posted one question. Before I go to question, I know we are actually beyond our time limits already. I know your time is very valuable, Prabhu. I will have one question from our devotees. Just I'd like to mention you that today's video call, actually, this class is attended by so many devotees from all over the Canada, not only in Scarborough, and also from, I see, Ananga Manjuri Mataji from Mauritius. So the question I'm going to is, it's actually in regards with your explanations, nicely said. But one devotee wants to know that during this COVID time, we have very good relation or interactions with our children because we are closed environment. How to retain this in future when everything will be normal? Very good question. So please explain a little bit.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It's good to hear such such truths, such truthful words or encouraging words. That yes, we do have. Many of us are having these wonderful experiences with our children. These revelations are there. So thank you for sharing that. And because Amal Thakur Prabhu asked a question before, I think if we can contact this devotee and have such other devotees share their experiences, it will be helpful too. How to continue this? Isn't that what an intelligent person asks? So sit down with a pen and paper and try and think what could disturb this scenario. Note down all of those points. And then if you have 3 or 4 points noted down, like lack of time, or would be again going out to work, or so many other responsibilities outside the house, see how many of them are important and how often in a week. And most probably you'll figure out that there you could still invest sufficient time in these relationships that you have developed in these months. You could still invest sufficient time in that. And it is worth more than maybe thousands of dollars that you make working more. So what are our needs? What are our demands? And what is unessential? So this answer, I tried to just give some practical tips. Look at all that is unessential. And if you want, then just cancel those things out of your life. Just tick them off. And you'll be left with these wonderful relationships. Yes, once the outside world opens up, we'll need to invest some time and energy in the outside world too. That is true. At what cost and how much? We still have the time to decide that right now. So let us make very good investments in life henceforward. So I'll stop here. Is that all right?
Thank you, Prabhu. Well said. And we would like to thank you from our hearts, especially from all the devotees and ISKCON Scarborough, for giving us your valuable time. And for every one of us, please follow Rohinipriya Prabhu on Facebook, because he is actually almost every day his classes are there. So go there and subscribe there, and you will get the notifications. He delivers so many wonderful classes like today's one. And hope to get you, Prabhu, again. And thanks everyone for joining our virtual Sunday Feast class, and hope we'll meet you again on next classes. Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.